the video, but we're really not going to have time to go through the video. So, but we're just going to chat about some of the information in the video, and maybe I guess we're going to set it up for next week. Is that okay? Sound good? Somebody earlier in the program spoke too long, so.
That's my fault.
Okay. All right. And the video's about how to overcome guilt and shame. And I've been, shame has been on my heart, on my radar, that I felt like we needed to cover it here. And I particularly on the back side of the sheet, it's about the shame, the compass of shame, and I've had that for a couple of years, and I've been I look at it ever so often, and so I wanted to talk about that, and then there's several different videos. One's on the compass of shame. There's several others, and I'm still investigating it. But this video was very interesting. There's probably 6 or 8 people talking about it. One's Brene Brown. If you're familiar with Brene Brown, she talks about it, and T.D. Jakes and several others that talk about different aspects of shame and also guilt. And so you're welcome to go ahead and watch that before next week, or you can wait till we watch it next week. And I haven't actually decided whether we want to go through it. Probably we'll go through it. I really like to go through it. I'm looking for some feedback here. I like something that we've done a lot here is we go through the videos and we go through it a chunk at a time and talk about it. I think it helps process. Do you agree, disagree? Okay. So probably I'm pretty certain we'll go through it chunk at a time. It's set up in segments anyway, and so we can show it. So it'll take a while. We may not even get through it the first time. So because you guys like to talk a lot, But I think we ought to start off with talking about what is there, and if there is, what is the difference between guilt and shame? Any thoughts? Is guilt and shame the same thing? Excuse me?
Guilt and shame, inward and outward. Guilt is inward, shame is outward. Which means shame is you're afraid of what other people think. Guilt is you're afraid of what you think.
I agree with that. Also, on the shame aspect, it's more about, yes, you do. It's about what you're afraid of what other people are thinking, but it's more about how you see yourself. It's that I am shameful, that there's something wrong with me. I am bad. Where guilt is more of I did something bad. Shame is oftentimes in the area that I feel that I'm bad. Okay, does that make sense? Yes? You agree with that? All right. I was looking for one nod in the room, and you were it. I know I met you earlier. You refresh me on your name? Mims? Mims. Okay. Well, I just met him the first time a little bit ago, so I needed to practice on your name there. Mims. All right. Okay, so guilt is about, and you know what? Throughout the years, my mind has shifted on some of these things, guilt and shame, and I'm assuming that as I continue to pursue this topic for our discussion, it will continue to develop. That's the way it works, right? Yes, it is. At least it is for me anyway, it seems like. But guilt I used to say that, there was no good reason to have guilt, but I have changed my opinion about that. Okay, because, because I've gotten quite a bit of new information in that area, but let me say what I'm talking about here, and that is guilt of being that you know that you've done something wrong. That's the valuable part, recognizing you did something wrong. Hanging on to guilt after you've recognized that you've done something wrong and you have addressed it, because when you know that you've done something wrong, then you address it, then going ahead and being guilty about what you did, even though now you have addressed it, is absolutely crazy. And I'm speaking to some of you, right? Oh, sorry. Excuse me. I shouldn't have said that. Because we continue to beat ourselves up over stuff that is in the past, that we've already addressed, that we've already made amends for, that other people have forgiven us for, but we did not forgive ourselves, so we're continually to beat ourselves up. Am I speaking the truth? And that would definitely be crazy. Wouldn't you agree with that? Amen or oh me. Right, Mims? Okay, you're the only friendly one in the house right now, so I got to go to you, all right? So, do what? We don't see it that way, and the way you don't see it is what? Well, you talk the way you talk, and I'll talk the way I'm a-talking. Okay. Yes. I'm just playing with you. Yes. And that is the system that we've all learned by the age of 5 worldwide, that if I punish me for things that I've done wrong and continue to punish me, that will reinforce or ensure or guarantee that I won't make that same mistake again. Correct? That's the belief. It's stupid, but that's the belief, to put it bluntly. Okay? And why is that stupid? Because that may have offended some of you, and if that offended you, tough. Okay? I don't know why I'm doing this tonight, but but the truth is that, see, whatever we practice and whatever we think about, every thought that we think about expands. Okay, when we every thought, when you think a thought, it fires together, and when it fires together, it wires together, and that strengthens that thought circuit. Does that make sense? And when we think about not doing what it is that we don't want to do, all we're doing is thinking about what it is that we don't want to do, and that strengthens that thought circuit. And you think, well, that will help me to not do it. But all that does, our brain doesn't register necessarily the not. It just registers the thought, and you see the picture of it, and it reinforces that behavior. And and if you think that I don't want to do this, 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 you think that long enough, then you do it, because you have made a neural highway of thought, and when you reach into your power bag, when it's time to make a decision, you pull out the thing that's the biggest and most powerful, and it's the thing that you've practiced the most. And what did you practice the most? What you don't want to do. So then what do? You do what you practiced, and that was not to do it, but you do it anyway. Right? That's right. Absolutely, because I had a friend that lived on a highway, and she'd go out to her post office, or not her post office, but her mailbox right on the highway, and she said, I never can figure out how come those cars keep coming at me. And then she heard me talk about this very thing, and she realized that they don't want to hit her, so they keep watching her, and then they swerve towards her because that's where they're looking. Wherever you look, that's where you go. So the point of this story here is we need to look at where we want to go. Like Paul said, we need to look at where we want to go. We need to look at what we want to do, not what we don't want to do. That sounds real simple, right? It sounds like it. And I have practiced this, in all different situations, and that is to focus on my path, and because our tendency, if you're on, several years ago, actually it was when I was a teenager, I drove down this road that had, it was just a little wider than a car, and it dropped off on both sides. Now, I don't know why I felt the need to drive across this road, but wasn't that a great idea? I did really well because for some reason I knew I needed to keep my eyes on where I wanted to go. But there was a real strong urge to look at the stuff over on the sides because I want to look at where I don't want to go. And actually, because before I was a teenager, I was probably 6 or 7. I was riding down a hill, and I saw this probably 2-foot chug hole in the middle of the road, and I thought, I do not want to hit that hole. And the closer I got, the more I looked at it, the more I said, I do not want to hit it. I don't want to hit that. I don't want to hit that. And then I picked myself up after I hit it, okay? And I thought, man, I said I didn't want to hit it. But see, and I didn't understand the principle at that time, but wherever you look, that's where you go. And the same thing with guilt, that we need to, the good part of it is to recognize that you know that you've done something wrong, and then you deal with it. Great, yes. And then when you've dealt with it, then you shift your focus and you let that go. What do you do with it? You let it go. What do you do with it? You let it go. You stop looking at it. You stop handling it. You stop feeling bad about that. Well, how do you do that? How do you do that? That's a great question. Why didn't you ask that question earlier? And one of the reasons why we can't let it go is because our feelings are wrapped up in this, and they're picking us up and carrying us down that destructive road. Yeah, the adrenaline. And the fact of it is, if we would just take 20 minutes or so, that adrenaline will come out of our body if we stop feeding ourselves the adrenaline, okay? But how do you do that is you have to intentionally focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. That sounds easier than it is. But the fact of it is, whatever you practice, you get better at. Yes, sir. And the way you do that is by asking yourself a question. What is in my best interest here? Really, what's in my best interest? Because we like to lie to ourselves, and our first response is, well, it'd make me feel better just to go deal with this thing, and the fact of it is, but then what's really in my best interest? What would I tell somebody that I really cared about and concerned about? What would I what would I encourage them to do? Because oftentimes we can give others better information than we feed to ourselves. Right. And so we are way off the path, but that's all right. We'll and you see, Lord bless you, and and that is the one of the main things that we have that helps us and that will help us to get healthier is to be able to direct our focus. Okay, our focus, because our emotions want to pick us up and drag our focus off. Okay, and whatever you focus on, that's where you're going to go. So what we have to do is we have to practice our focus. Now, for me, and when our brain gets to spinning and our emotions get high, either I get panicked or scared or overwhelmed or all of them at the same time, you know, I picture that in my world of like riding a runaway horse, or a horse that runs and bunks. And because when I was a kid, I had one of those. Okay, I had two of those. And if you panic, then you lose all control, right? You lose. Well, you said, well, you don't have any control. Yeah, you do. Okay, if you go ahead and it may be limited, but you have some. All right, you get to choose. You know, it's not what happens to you, Epictetus said. It's your response to what happens to you. Yes, but it's healthy stuff. And so, and for instance, this horse that the first one that ran away and was trying to buck us off, you know, it saw some trees and it was just a little taller than the horse. So it dipped its head and ran underneath the trees. Now, I was just a kid, but I saw what was coming. And it didn't look good. And so, and actually my little brother was on front of me and I pushed him down and we both laid down as flat as we could. And fortunately for him, I covered his back, but the limbs got mine. But it was better than what would happen the other way, if you know what I mean. The second one was it was a big horse, and it took off running full steam, and I wasn't for sure what I was doing. I was doing exactly, you know, have you ever been in a situation and you were doing exactly what you were supposed to do? The guy said, if he runs, just jerk back on the reins and holler, whoa. That's what he said. And lean back. It did not work, okay? It did not work. What worked was when that horse saw the electric fence it was about to go into. But it didn't see the concrete driveway in front of the electric fence. But I did. And so I decided the best thing for me to do was to start going to the rear of that thing. I'm talking about the horse. And so I pushed off towards the rear, and when it hit that concrete, it went to sliding, and I hit the pavement about the same time it did, but I hit on my feet, and it slid off of its feet. And so the idea here is sometimes you can do everything that you're supposed to be doing, and it still doesn't work, but don't lose your head. Okay.
Me either.
There is, I believe this, there is always a way out. Okay? On the continuum of choice, there's multiple decisions, choices. And there are, on this end, there's healthy ones, and on this end, there's unhealthy ones. And there's a lot in between, right? I encourage you to pick as healthy a choice as you can. The healthier, the better. Would you agree with that? Now, and then learn from the experience. Right? Learn from the experience. So, we started down this highway talking about guilt. And so guilt is recognizing the mistake. And so guilt is not all bad unless you keep riding that horse. How about that? Tying it together. Okay? If you stay on it, it's not going to work out, okay? You're going to have a wreck. Either you're going to run into the trees or you're going to end up underneath the horse, okay? And so when you recognize the mistake, deal with it and then let it go, right? Yes. Delay? About delaying your choices? That practicing the holding back and practicing that choice. And I wanted to talk about that practicing your focus. And I don't know if this is where you were going, but I'm going to go ahead and hit that because I'm already a little over. And that is, here's an exercise. I've said it here before, and that is to learn how to work on your focus. And that, for me, how I started this particular exercise helped me, and that was counting backwards from 100, visualizing each number from 100, 99, visualizing it like you're writing on a chalkboard or seeing it on like on an elevator. You're seeing the numbers, and you're going down slowly, and if you can, breathe between each one and see the numbers, and do it in succession without missing one, okay? And if you miss one, you start over. And I remember sitting out here on Main Street many years ago when my mind was spinning out of control and wanted me to do something, anything, you know what I mean? Because, see, sometimes we feel like if I just do something, that'll make it better. But that is not always the truth. So this is a good time for a feeling question. Must your feelings always be telling you the truth? Well, I have to disagree with you. There are probably some in there, but right now it may not be a good idea to, but eventually you will get better. Eventually, if you practice on it, okay? And so what we need to do is we need to practice on our focus, and practicing that in succession over and over and over, and don't get too frustrated at yourself when you lose the focus. The most beneficial part of the focus is recognizing when you have messed up, and you bring it back and you begin again. Okay? And then if you're so good you get to 0 without messing up, and your brain is still spinning at the same rate of speed, which sometimes can happen, I remember that, then you do it again. Because you can only think on one deep thought at a time. You can think of a lot of other things, scattered monkey thoughts, you know how the drunken monkey is, right? That's been stung by the scorpion. It's going wild, and sometimes that's the way our mind goes. But if you if you bring that in and you do this exercise and you bring it back to where you want it to be, when you finally get there and you're in that place, then you can direct it to where you want to go. And that concludes that little ditty. How about that? I'm afraid to ask if there's any comments. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you and give you his peace. Amen? And make healthy choices. Practice what you want. No. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.